Hey everybody, it's David with No Chaser here, and still feeling pretty good. I mean, had some thoughts here and there about drinking and using, but nothing too crazy. And I think on this sort of recent and hopefully eternal stint of sobriety that's overcame me, or at least this feeling that's overcome me, is that I think one thing that I'm super grateful and elated for is that I feel sane. You know, one of the biggest things you talk about, like all the super not great downsides of, active alcoholism or drug addiction is, of course, there's the sadness and despair and the shame and just the consequences that happen in your life, like getting in trouble with the law or with your family or just all the stress and all that stuff. But I don't think that what's talked about enough, at least in my sort of experience, is just the madness of it all. Like truly, like I think one thing that is like novel about a person in active alcoholism and addiction is that it's a sane person going insane in ways. Like, for the most part, people that are crazy, I mean, that's not really a great eloquent term, crazy. People that are mentally ill, there's usually like it's because of chemical reasons in your brain, like or traumatic life events or combination of the both mistreatment, growing up, all that type of stuff, all mixed into one. But like, there's usually those major, if not only, reasons why a person, becomes mentally ill. But when it comes to being in the life of an alcoholic or an addict, you're it's kind of like you're going crazy just from what your life is, just from the cycle of everything that what I mean by this is like sort of the madness is that, and particularly why I feel again so grateful for where I'm at right now is that I feel like it kind of sounds strange, just grateful that I feel sane, but you know, there's this, I as I like reflect upon just my life in times of the active addiction and like what had been going on in my life recently was that there was all this kind of stuff happening to where it was like being in addiction and alcoholism, you think of it as like you do crazy things or you believe crazy things for a moment, but not that you're actually like going crazy. It's just like the life you're living is crazy, but there's always this assumption that like everything's still kind of there. That you're still like functioning somewhat normally cognitively, or you have moments like, especially if you do meth or or you're getting a lack of sleep because of your addiction, you're crazy just in these brief spots, but not like a good old-fashioned like overall going nuts in a sense. And what I mean by that is that these like I like what was kind of happening to me is like one, just your sort of your sort of key fundamental points of truly going bonkers, like things like delusions, things like paranoia, things like insane sort of denial of reality. And I I had all those things kind of going on, not in a way where it's like hearing voices or in a way of like believe aliens or like controlling your mind or the TV's talking to you or things like that, not those sort of like very particular specific things, but in a sense where, like, for instance, is that I started to think, because I was living like a life of lies and like secrecy, that other people were too, because they had to be, right? Because if I'm doing it so much, other people got to be doing it. It's kind of like the person that is like the constant sort of pathological cheater, like of infidelity and stuff, and they think their spouse or their significant other is cheating too, and they take all these signs or all these things that they're super paranoid about it, because this form of like projection to where if you're doing it so much, other people got to be doing it too. And I had all these weird things like, that people lie more than they do, or like everybody has some sort of like secret they're keeping, and what is their secret, and just all this sort of mistrust in people. And again, not like a complete like people are imposters or anything like that, but this very strange sense that like everybody else is not really there. It's kind of like sometimes where even people that get clean and sober, they think everybody else is like addicted to something, which some people make the case that like that's kind of true in a way, but they mean like addicted like you were. And I had things like that where, there's also sort of the crazy delusional things where you think the life you're living is sustainable in some way, or that you'll use, I don't know, freebase crack normally, or that you can kind of find a way to drink normal. Those are like some of the classic delusions that I think all alcoholics and addicts go through. But I mean, in a sense, if you get down to it, if you really believe that, that is such an insane idea. I remember one time where this, especially if you're drinking, and some people play the little musical chairs game where they go to different gas stations and grocery stores to buy their alcohol because, God forbid, the nameless, faceless, cashier person thinks you're an alcoholic. I mean, your mom and your wife or husband and your coworkers, they all think you're alcoholic, but hopefully the person at Casey's gas station doesn't think you are. But the thing that you're totally worried about is like the judgment. Because even the silent projected judgment that the person may not care that you're buying alcohol at 6 a.m. because they see a ton of people do it, but you're afraid about what they think about you. But the worst thing is that if someone were to say something, I remember this happened a while ago. I was actually with somebody else too, but we were just doing a totally normal thing of buying alcohol with change at like 8 a.m. And I remember this person like broke the code, like the gas station attendant code, where she actually said something as we were paying for, counting all the quarters and nickels and stuff to pay for this, bottle of vodka. She just kind of like, as we were finally, wrapping up, she just said something where she just goes, "You guys just do this? You guys just drink all the time?" And we were like, "What? How dare you make this completely rational observation that's factual?" We were just so taken aback just because like someone had said something. But thinking back to that, I think what she really meant was the more basic sort of like totally, feasible question of, do you guys really just live like this? And like, that's a fair question because, living like that to not completely stop or to just completely like, I don't know, kill your buzz the whole time is you have to like sort of deny the insanity of your life to kind of keep it going. Like it's always kind of aware, like you're always aware of it, but to really not fully acknowledge it, there's all this denial and delusion that borderline's like crazy. And I remember the funniest part is I even still had it wrong because, I thought about it and I'm just like, yeah, it is crazy that I live like this because I'm going to get in trouble. Not thinking about like, this is a horrible way to live, and your body is slowly withering from this, and your mind is withering from this, and all your loved ones are worried about you, or now hate you, or you're destroying all sort of career advancement you could possibly have, and all financial institutions of your life are broken. Not any of that stuff, but I was just like, I'm going to get caught. You're right. This is crazy. As if to say, if it weren't for those things, I would still keep living like this. And sort of the madness that I started coming into was really just this sort of giddy nihilism my brain was trying to adopt. And I say that word a lot, and it's a word that I had to look up to learn. But like nihilism is this total mindset that everything's meaningless. And you can have kind of an apathy about it, about life, to a point where you're like, I don't care about anything anymore because everything's pointless. Nothing happens for a reason. This is all just random. We're just on this big giant rock in space. But however you want to intellectualize it. But basically what I mean by giddy nihilism is like trying to adopt this sense of like nothing matters and that's good, because if stuff did matter, it would be really sad the way I'm living. So I can't believe that things matter. So I would have this nihilism almost to a crazy level because I would just kind of go around and be like, you know what? Like if something really risky happened or something, I almost got like pulled over or almost got caught with something, or like I had, like bad health problems start to arise, I'd be like, nothing matters, man. I would just have to try to get myself to believe that, because the alternative, if I didn't believe that, is that, dude, you got to do something about your life, which I did not want to do. And so I would get into these modes where things were like happening around me in my life, and it was just like a crazy level of just like ignoring it or pretending it wasn't happening. And again, this, you think of denial as like a different form. Like, it's not quite craziness. It's more so, I don't know, just a defense mechanism of some sort. But it's not quite crazy. But for me, it got to the level of craziness. It's like, dude, how can you? It's just like seeing your your clothes are on fire and just not taking them off. You're like, man, someone needs to turn the AC up in here. It's getting hot. Like, just not taking your clothes off and just convincing yourself they're not on fire or something like that. Or your pants, because you're a liar. Nailed it. But I had this sense where, you start to adopt this nihilism, that's nothing matters, and you start to have to, like, imprint in your mind all this sense of denial or just ignoring, and your mind starts to really go down some holes, because you can't believe in normal functions of life anymore. You can't believe that things matter. You can't believe that you affect anything. You can't believe in just the laws of reality, like your health and like the probability of something really bad happening to you, and the fact that everything is getting worse. And in order to do this, like, you start to make your own mind go crazy, because you're just pushing out, like, you have to like believe in these delusions. And at a certain point, where the true madness begins is when you're not forcing yourself to believe the delusions anymore. It becomes so natural that, like, you're like, yeah, this is the way reality is, I guess. Like, and that my point being is that there's only so long you can kind of deny reality, and you can kind of like deny the truth, and you just live a lie for so long. You can only do that for so long without that extreme cognitive dissonance, starting that friction of reality and the way you want reality to be, or at least pretending it is, to come up against each other, to where you just kind of like start to have these like almost breaks with reality, where the evidence is in front of you and it's so clear that you're just starting to do this, and then all of a sudden you don't even have to do that anymore. You actually become, in this weird way, reality blind. And life will, no matter what you do, life is going to find a way to like hold that up to you and be like, this is the way it is, unless you go completely crazy. And that's what kind of a point where I was at, where I was just kind of denying everything that was happening around me. And I just like that question the lady asked, well, at least I kind of rewrote it. So what I mean she meant was like, you really live like this? And you have to say yes. And you have to say yes in a way to that without feeling super bad about what that intends. So you start believing the world is like, people are, they're always up to something. You become very paranoid about everything, whether in your relationships. Like, people are trying to make me feel bad for some reason. They're not just telling me what is actually going on, but they're trying to make me feel bad. What are their schemes? What are they up to? Where you start believing things about your life that you don't actually mean. Like, I don't want a life of purpose or fulfillment. I just want to kind of go through this, or I'm just kind of getting by. I'm just getting through this rough patch in my life. It's like, dude, it's been 10 years. It's not a rough patch. This is a rough decade. This has to stop in a way. And to just make yourself blind to that is almost, like I said, this self-imposed sort of like mental illness of, I don't know to say it any other way. You can't be that out of touch with reality all the time and just expect to still make decisions normally. And where it really affected me is that, of course, when you're in like the cycle of it, it's easier. You're pumping chemicals into your brain, and you're it's wearing thin on you. You're not getting any normal functions of your life, like eating normally or sleeping normally, and that affects you crazy amounts. But then even in times when I get sober, and this is what I'm talking about, where I feel like so much better now at like this point in like right now, is because it was before where even in the times of being sober, that craziness was still like there. Like, I would not be drinking or using, but I really want to. And it was this constant battle, like almost like there was a split mind, where it was just this arguing going on of like, we want to go back to doing the bad thing, but these consequences are all on your way, and all this really bad stuff's going to happen. But not to actually acknowledge that hey, you shouldn't want to do these things because it just leads to a bad life or it's going to kill you. Not because it's hard to do or you can't get away with it anymore, but that you shouldn't want to live that way. And so that was what really affecting me, is because all this sort of like these delusions and this denial, it was like starting to hang over into like when I was sober, in this way where I was maybe sober and clean, but I did not have the clarity of mind. And eventually it would just lead back to going back to using and drinking, because like just my mind was not being cleared out. And that's what like some people ask about, like going to treatment, even if you know all the literature, you know all the stuff, you know everything they're going to teach you, you know everything they're going to tell you. It's like, what is the point of even doing that? And sometimes the point of doing that is just like, you need your brain to flush. Like, you need to like get out of the fog completely. A lot of people mention that when they're in treatment. We're like, by like week 2, they're like, the fog. I thought the fog lifted when I was just out of the withdrawals and stuff. But no, this other deeper fog that I wasn't even sure, like, didn't even realize was there. This is starting to lift too. Like, this is, and, it, you don't really see it there because you're like in your state, like as you're conscious, even like right now, like you think that as long as you're not under the influence, like you're thinking normally because you're clear-minded. But I never thought that. It's like, no, this stuff kind of hangs around. And, there's things like post-acute withdrawal syndrome where you still have like some of the symptoms of stuff. But I thought they were more so things like just depression, or I'd be irritable or something. But truly getting back to a life that is aligned with reality in some way. Like, okay, I'm actually like processing things, and I'm starting to see all the stuff that I was thinking before. Again, even in times of sobriety that were just not not in touch with reality. I really can't say anything other differently. That just not in touch with reality. And so, I don't know. I'm like starting to take that on. I guess I'm just excited about not being totally insane. Which the insanity can kind of come and go sometimes, but like it's more so. It's like I think finally someone like, I was doing horribly in my like learner's like driving test, and how the guy next to you, the instructor, can like take over the pedals and the wheel and stuff. It's like he's like, okay, we're done. You're just, I'm taking over now. It's like that for once the normal, or not normal, but the clear-minded and the like again the person in tune with the way things, like at least who knows the way things really are, like a sort of true reality, but the reality that is most in touch with what the truth is. And it's kind of like feeling like that driving instructor is like, okay, we're going to take over this car and you'll learn to drive again, but we need to get you back in with like how things really are, and that stuff does matter. And even if you don't, like, regardless of what you think of existential things, like your life does matter, and you should care about what you do with it, or at least for your own self. Like, you should care about yourself. That's one of the biggest things. It's just like, dude, you need to like care about yourself, even if you don't want to, even if all the bad stuff you did is like making you not want to do it. You have to do it, because if you don't, then you'll act as if. So anyways, that's all I got for today. So hopefully I'm not crazy.